Hi, I'm Bonnie McDonald Dixon, and today I'm here with Ann Crawford, and we are so excited to share with you today manifesting your career, a career that you literally love right now, not next year, not the year after, not 10 years from now, right now. And we had a conversation last week, and this week we're going to talk about that transition zone. If you've been thinking about it, you're already in transition. And Anne, welcome today. It's just so much fun to hang with you because you've been doing this a long time, helping people transition. And share with us a few of your ideas and your thoughts about the cost of staying somewhere that you're not happy in, and I call it the cost of leaving too, but it's actually, there's a benefit to it. I say a cost to everything, but it's not always a bad cost. But share with us the cost of staying in somewhere that you just aren't doing well in.
Well, I want to thank you, Bonnie. Honestly, you're the expert. You're the one that wrote the book. So I admire you greatly. And I call transitions kind of, especially when it comes to careers like the highway, it can be the highway of hell or it can be the highway of pleasure. It's up to you, but there are costs. Just think of your car. If you don't maintain it, there's cost to that. It doesn't go anywhere. Well, it's the same thing with your transitions too in your career. And then let's not get this mistaken. If you have a career that you absolutely love and never feel like you want to get ahead in it or it just completes you 100%, then maybe this isn't for you. But there isn't, to be honest with you, a person out there that I haven't heard say, I want a raise, or I want more creativity in my job, or I want more flexibility, or I actually really want to get out of this. And that's when you have to take the transition. It
Mhm.
can be pretty scary.
Mhm. You know what's interesting? Even within somewhere that you're working, if you're working for someone else, sometimes it's the transition of like you said, gaining more autonomy within that job. So these tips and tools and things that we're talking about today can actually make the job that you might not even like that much a job that you really love, or it can help you transition from a job that you didn't love to a job that you, or a business. So an experience I had was I was working for our favorite US Postal Service in the 80s, and I always said I wasn't going to do that because my dad did that, but it was literally the only job around. I kind of lived in a rural area. It paid well, but as I was doing the job the very first day, Anne, I walked in 110-degree heat in August, my very first day, and I got blisters this big on the bottom of my feet. And I went, oh my goodness, I have to get out of here. I knew so fast
Yeah.
that I needed to leave that job. But yet the pay was good, and you could save money, and you had benefits and everything. But what I did is I started some changes right away. I thought, I know what I'd really like to do, and that would be to own a business, a health food store, in fact. So I started going after working all day, all hot and sweaty in my outfit. I would go and take college classes in the evening to learn how to run a business. Now, that's just one way you can do it. You can be working your job that you are in, but learning more skills, either within the job or outside of the job, to make yourself more valuable. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I, I'll give you a perfect example of this from one of my clients from a long time ago. So he was a long haul trucker and he was in his late 50s and he was burnt out. So when we talk about the cost of staying versus going,
Mhm.
and we first focused on what made him happy outside of work because he said, I really do need to work until I'm 65, unless something greater comes along. And so we found out that his stress reliever was bicycling. He goes, I used to do it all the time. I said, well, it's time to take it up again. Well, I don't have the time. And I said, there are no excuses because your mental health is really at high risk right now. So he started doing it. And then what was the next thing he would do? He joined a biking group because he found that it really did work.
Mhm.
Then we said, what do you love even more? And he goes, well, I kind of like traveling. So I said to him, have you ever thought of going abroad since you love traveling on your vacations and doing a bicycle tour? I never thought about that. So off he trucks over to Europe and he had a great time. He went for 2 weeks and stayed in hotels and stuff like that, but did his bicycling group, made lots of connections over there. I said, when he came back, he was almost a different person. He said, I love this. I'm going to do this every year. I said, you can transition this into a second career if you want. How is that possible? Well, let's do exactly what you did. Let's reach out to resources. So he contacted the travel company that he went through and said, listen, I'd like to do this again, but I'd like to actually be part of your group, or if there are other groups. They said, we'd love it. Come on over. Come on over next summer. We'll make it. If you can stay for a month, that would be awesome. We need English translators for some of our foreign groups. If they come from Europe, France, you name it. Off he trots. He does it. He didn't get paid for this now, but he got free lodging and
Mhm.
food. And he found that he was a people person, where actually being a truck driver, he liked the loneliness of it. He actually did, because he had a job before that he hated being in the office. So through that, he networked when he came home, found more travel businesses. And I'm glad to say that after, now this took about 3 to 4 years, he left the trucking industry at like probably 62 and is now going over to Europe and doing bicycling tours at his own pace, getting paid now. I haven't heard from him in years, but that's how it starts, everybody, is
Mhm.
you have a thought just like Bonnie and you just are unhappy. That's what we talked about in the gut feeling in our first session.
Mhm.
Then you make the moves as to how to make it happen. And anything is possible. It really is. I mean, if you could see this man in the beginning and how he was at the end, it was like a complete turnaround. But
Mhm.
that's how you do it.
That is such a great story. I just love that. It makes my heart sing for him
Yeah.
and the people around him. Because just imagine here's the cost of saying, we often don't even realize how unhappy we are. And that's a ripple effect. And we ripple to our family, our friends, blah, blah, blah about our job, blah, blah, blah. And what good is that? But
No,
can you
it's
imagine the joy that this gentleman that you helped, even 3 or 4 years is in a blip of time of his whole life, is a small amount of
yeah,
time to transition, the joy he brings to his heart, himself, and
yeah,
all the people around him. Oh my gosh. So the cost of staying is very high. It could be your
yeah.
health. It
It's usually
literally
an
could be your
emotional health.
wealth because you might not be making as much as you might have.
Right. It's
And
true.
yeah,
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, no, you go ahead first.
No, when we talk about the cost of it, I just see with my clients, and I'm sure you have, they're so unhappy. And like you just said, when you're unhappy, it is a ripple effect. It goes
Mhm.
down to your bosses, your coworkers, and then at home. Even your pets can sense that you're not
Oh
the
yeah.
usual spring happy person. They're like, hey, I
Mhm.
wanted to go for a walk. What's going on? So
Mhm.
you're absolutely correct.
Mhm. You can hear it sometimes in people, family members, friends, coworkers, if you're in a regular job, and you can hear their unhappiness. And again, the cost of your health, there's nothing else. If you don't have your health, you aren't working, and it can take a long time to be unhappy. Your cells literally know when you're under a stress, and that stress could be low level, just slightly unhappy. But what would it take, as you were just sharing, the transition could be a part time gig on the side. And that is super cool because you get a taste of what it's like to love what you do. I always said in my book, volunteer your way into a new job. I actually did that as well. And I have volunteered my way several times. Also, one time I volunteered and found out, oh my gosh, I didn't like the job. Heaven forbid that I would have done it. I thought I wanted to be a veterinarian. And guess what? When I actually volunteered and worked for one, I went, oh no, oh no. They're biting me, they're scratching me, they're very unhappy animals when they're sick. And the drama of being working for a veterinarian, it's quite dramatic because people come in and their pets are hurt or dying, and people are quite emotional. So I found out, that I really, I didn't know that it would be like that. I thought you're helping people and helping their animals, but there's a lot more to it. So that is a very cool story. I love that story. You told me about it. So what do you think his belief was that it couldn't be done? It wasn't possible. So how did you help him through that bridge, through that belief to the new
I think
belief?
for all of us, you can't, the bigger picture is really wonderful. Oh, wouldn't it be awesome? But it's overwhelming for most people, I think, to get the concept of leaving where you are and getting to where you dream of being. And that's next week. But it's breaking down every task like you did. It really is sitting there with yourself and saying, if I want to move forward in my career, let's say they want to leave someplace, how can I do that? Well, it all starts with the idea right in your mind. Then it starts with writing your list, your pros and cons on what you love about it and what you hate about it, to get some clarity here. And I'm a big advocate. I like LinkedIn, and I tell my clients, if you want to change from like being a manager to a CEO, what does that take? And go talk to somebody, go on LinkedIn and just approach them, just saying, I'm not looking for employment, I'm looking for advice. I see that you're a CEO. What are the stresses? How did you get there? Because people's stories are very powerful. And I think most people would be surprised to hear that they just didn't fall into that CEO job. They worked their fannies off to get there, or they went back to school to take a few courses. I really, truly believe that if you break down the process of each task to go on to the next step, anything is achievable. As long as you understand that's not going to happen next week, but it could happen in 2 years. That's what I think.
That's a wonderful point that often, and I've seen it in younger people. Oh, I want to be a CEO right away. Well, if you do look at the stories, if you do ask people, I know a story. Michael Jackson as a singer. Oh, he was an overnight success. He had been singing since he was 5 years old. And by 25, he was a megastar. He'd already done 20 years of hard work. He was, it's so funny. We see the person when they're in their height of their success,
Yes.
but what was behind the scenes to get there? Dragon's Den is a show where people come on and pitch their businesses, and many of the time the dragons had really gone through a lot to get where they're at. And when people come on and just say, I just want to do this, and this is what I've done so far, and they look at them and they go, you've got a nice little hobby, but you don't have a business. And so I think sometimes we have a fantasy, and I want to talk more about that next week, of the fantasy versus the reality of this. But what you said today is the word possibility. It's possible. And Les Brown talked about it's possible. There's so many cool people out there that have really broken through, and we need to follow the leader on that and not be deterred, because people told me, oh my goodness, don't quit the post office. So you'll get pushback, by the way.
Yes.
When you want to transition, people will push very hard because they don't want you to change. Your family and friends, even your coworkers, oh no, don't change. Stay still, because they're afraid, because they haven't done it. What do you say about that, Ann? The pushback?
The pushback comes from fear. It's their comfort zone. Well, if you leave, then it won't be the same. I'm going to be a bad person if I actually tell you I really don't want you to leave, they have the fake, oh, that's wonderful, where they're like cringing, going, she's leaving the post office? How dare she? When inside they're like, I only wish I was as powerful as Bonnie and as self-assured. So there's a price. There's a price to pay when you think about that. If you're not happy for somebody moving on or going through a transition, then that's a clear indication you're not happy within yourself.
Ooh, that's a zinger right there. That's
Yeah.
a really good one of assessing yourself of how do you feel when someone else moves on and changes career entirely or just moves up in within a company or suddenly they have an attitude adjustment. It's scary for people if you have an attitude adjustment.
Oh, yeah. They're not used to you standing up for yourself. Well,
Mhm.
how dare they say something? How dare
Mhm.
they leave me in the lurch? Well, the the environment, it was toxic in your workplace, so what did you expect? But they're used to the people just saying, yes, I'll do it. Yes, I'll cover for the 3 people that were laid off. I'll do
Mhm.
it. But when you finally stand up for yourself, you know this is too much. And if they can't expect you to want to move on or speak up, I don't know what's going on in their heads. They're in denial for
Mhm.
sure. They're
For
in denial.
sure, for sure. Now, one of the things I wanted to talk about was where we can put some of the stuff. Greg and I, my husband and I both, I have many little journals, but getting a journal just for this particular area of your life. You have different journals, maybe one for your relationship, but one with your work is really, if you got a really pretty special journal and really put the pen to the paper and start writing, I think all sorts of stuff will come out.
I
Is
think
that
so.
something you recommend, Anne?
I always recommend journaling for whatever situation. So if you want to put one journal for work and disconnect that with one your personal life, or you're getting stronger spiritually, or whatever you want to do, it is a great insight. And it's remarkable to see where you started and where you finished and how much the progress. I don't think people have let me just say this. Journaling is all about telling your inner feelings here. And it doesn't matter whether or not you are talking about just leaving a job. There's so many emotional based things that are going on with you when you want to transition out of what you're doing now. And I strongly suggest, just like Bonnie said, to start journaling every day. Write what you were struggling with. Why didn't you put in for that job application? Why didn't you go talk to somebody? What are the backlashes of this? Is this going to change your family dynamics? Like if you go to a job that's going to have longer hours, but the pay is astronomically more and it moves you up the corporate ladder, if that's what you want, there's prices to pay for each decision that we make. So putting that in the journal, you'll get a real close look at really what your priorities are during this transition time, because transition means change, and many people don't like change, but change is great when it's in your control, when you are the master of it. So that's the difference.
I saw the funniest little thing years and years and years ago at a coffee shop. It said, "If you fear change, leave it here." It was a little sign.
I love
I
it.
thought it was the funniest thing because people are so afraid, what will happen? So that
Yeah.
journaling in that book really dig deep into the fear of what would happen if the change was good, because
Right.
change is just change, and again, our family, friends, and our surroundings want everything to be static and stable because that fear factor is, what if it changes,
Right.
and I had a girl say to me, a gal friend up in Seattle, I had left my post office job, worked for a health food store, left the health food store after 4 years, and it was a wonderful run. I opened a brokerage for a natural products brokerage. I had
Oh,
no idea what I was doing, really and truly. And someone said to me, "Oh, you're so brave." And I said, "Brave? Brave? I don't know if I'm brave or not, but I actually just jumped in and started doing it because I'd seen other people doing it. I actually didn't know what I was doing, but the exhilaration, the energy, the joy of learning. So I think that's part of this whole change thing is the joy. That's the one of the benefits is the exhilaration, joy, and energy. Oh my gosh. What do you think, Anne?
I think you nailed it, and I can see you light up. So you
Mhm,
are in complete alignment with your personality. You are a
mhm,
constant learner. And I think
mhm,
many people are, but they've just been squashed down to not just do the repetitive thing. But when you decided to leave and then you found something new to learn, and you're such a people person, it's like you exploded. You didn't care whether or not you didn't know what you were doing. And
mhm,
that's where the fear drops down. It just goes away because you're like, so what if I fail? I'm doing
mhm,
something, I'm having fun at this. I might not
mhm,
do it forever, but I'm learning something new. This is
mhm.
great. You align yourself with a product that you found an interest in, that you like the principles of it. So that,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. And back to that journaling thing. I just love it because you can write down, all the things that you might have ever thought you want to do. It's one of my exercises I love to teach. Get a deck of 100, 3x5 cards.
Mhm.
Write down everything you've ever thought about. Well, would this be fun? Would this be fun? What about if, I'd be I had all these things, a police person, policewoman, a veterinarian. I had so many things written down. Now take that deck that you've written down, that subset, and prioritize it. This is so much fun.
Mhm.
So you think about it maybe in the future, that maybe you'd want to do it in a few years. And then
Yep.
now, and that's what we're talking about today. Right now, what
Right
would you
now.
like to do?
Right.
It's usually
Right.
only a few things. And then back to you said, it helps narrow the choices down and you can start choosing how to get to that now. Yeah, maybe in the future you want to be an artist, but right now you'd like to become a yoga teacher.
Exactly.
Mhm,
Exactly. I mean, a lot of people say, well, when my I can't do it right now, my kids are little and I can't do it.
mhm,
Well, you can do some things, just like
mhm,
the art. If you get into yoga, you can get into an artisan group that does
mhm,
the yoga, but it does the painting and it does a whole bunch of other things that are very calming and everything. And then you identify, I do need calming in my thing. Oh, yoga is perfect for that. But look at Sally's doing those paint classes on Thursday nights. I'd love
mhm,
to do that. Then my goal will be, maybe I can teach paint because that's what I really, really love. Then you can say, well, while the kids are little, I'll approach all the soccer moms and see whether they want to do it. And then
mhm,
it's like, oh, my husband's in the military. I'll do the military spouses. I mean,
mhm,
this is how you create the transferable skills during transitional times. So by the time your kids are 15, 16, and then they're college age, if that's what they choose to do, you'll already laid the foundation of your true happiness. All you have to do now is just take a few steps further.
mhm.
But you journal along the way as to how much you want to do and how much commitment you want to take. And why is that true?
Mhm. You just nailed a couple really cool things. Transferable skills. In that same notebook, almost write a resume for yourself. What do you know? And you are going to be shocked at how much you know, no matter what your age. You know a lot. And
Right.
people on the resume, it's not so stagnant anymore. It can be very flexible. Yet at the same time, some of these quote resumes are online and it's very non-personal. But we'll talk about that more next
Mhm.
week because I have a cool
Mhm.
story for next week on this of how I got a job. In fact, they said, "All right, already,
Oh,
you've got the job."
yeah.
But, I think one of the things you just said was really cool is transferable skills. Write it down. You know more than you think you do.
Mhm.
If you don't know enough about one of them, well, that's back to learning. That's that gapping, you know, of where you want to be and where you want to go and what's missing. And maybe it is a skill you need to learn. Right now, I have a goal of learning a little program called Canva. I've been winging it and faking it with some other things, but I go, that is something I want to do. And I'm 66 and it's like, no, that's a juicy little tidbit to what I want to learn how to do. You know,
Yeah.
just think about it. If I learn it today at 66, if I'm alive in my 90s, I've had like 30 years, to fiddle around with it, right?
It's so true. It's just like when I was going to coaching school, I did the personal growth workshops beforehand that gave me the background to say, I love facilitating groups and seeing people go from one position to another. And then I went to coaching school and I did kind of like you. I'm like, oh, I have to go back to school and take tests. And I don't like tests. The fear went right up. But there was something like we talked about in the beginning in the gut feeling that said, this is aligned with who you really are.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I did it. And the course wasn't that bad. I asked for a professor that had a sense of humor because I'm very humorous and so are you. And that relaxed me completely. So anything is possible if you just put down all the steps you're going to do it. And then
Mm-hmm.
I chose what I wanted to do because I saw the suffering of all my friends who couldn't
Right.
stand their careers
Right.
and they didn't have the skills to transition or even understand transition unless it was a bad thing. Like I was
Right.
forced to transition because I got laid off. I have to move because we got transferred. The other half got a job. I got a divorce. That's a transition. They were all assuming that it was from the negative when transition really can be phenomenally, constantly positive, especially when you are in control of what you want to transition.
Mhm. Ooh, I love that. That's really juicy stuff, what you just said. It doesn't have to be bad, it can actually be
Yes.
good. And when you have a helping hand, and that's what you and I do, we're the helping hand. We'll hold your hand as you go through this. And I'm really excited because we're coming back next week and we're going to talk about your dream job, your fantasy, and
Mhm.
the tools, some really juicy tools, and an offer for you because we each love helping people do things that they love to do. It makes us happy. Um, I think that if you'll come back next week, you're going to be happy to find out something that you can take and use in your life, no matter whether, no matter what you're doing. If you're transitioning within your job, if you're transitioning to another job, or if it's even a relationship within the job, because sometimes it's only one relationship that really is annoying within a job. And if that were to transition to a better relationship,
Mhm.
uh, that can make all the difference. Might not need to leave the job you're in. Uh, but also, one thing I want to touch on next week is transitioning from a job to a business. And do you have what it takes? We're going to talk about that too.
Good one. That's a good one.
Yeah,
Excellent.
yeah. So, Anne, any last thoughts today for our audience?
I think if you think of transition as reinforcing your skills and insights and growing instead of a negativity, you can achieve anything that you want in your personal or career life.
Mm, that's wonderful. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So we look forward to seeing you next week, Bonnie Dixon and Ann Crawford, and we're the dynamic duo going on here, helping you transition to something you absolutely love to do. See you next week.